Hi, welcome to Making Sense. My name is Delise. In this video, we are going to be looking at one aspect of communication that you can start working on now to make a difference to your relationship. And I believe this is one of the most important changes you will make. What we're referring to here is what we call reactivity or being reactive in communication. Communication difficulties are less about how to communicate, which is how we express ourselves or how we take in what somebody else is saying, but more about our emotional reactions that make communicating difficult. This is not to say that we can't learn skills to express ourselves better, but without dealing with the reactivity, then it will keep interfering in our communication, no matter how many how-tos we learn about healthy communication. So let's start by taking a look at what actually is happening when we are reactive. So when we are having a reaction to something, that begins with a feeling that goes through our body. This is our nervous system engaging, and we feel perhaps a number of different kinds of sensations that can range from tension, shallow breathing, or waves of heat or cold. Sometimes we get a feeling like electricity flowing through our bodies. So these are some examples of the kinds of sensations that you might be experiencing when you're having a reaction to something. So these responses in our nervous system are actually much quicker than our rational brain can think. That part of our brain that can assess situations and think through things and problem solve, etc. That part of our brain is actually pretty slow in comparison. Our emergency threat system, which is our nervous system primarily, responds immediately, which is why we call it reactive. This system is perceiving some kind of threat, whether there is or there isn't an actual threat, and reacting in preparation to deal with that threat. In relationships, we might react to what we perceive or experience as the other person attacking us or controlling us or hurting us in some way, sometimes ignoring us. So this reaction in our nervous system also contains many unconscious experiences where we learned to protect ourselves previously. Which isn't to say there is nothing that the other person is doing when we're having reactions, but it is often these unconscious and implicit experiences that we are responding to that make the reaction more of a crisis and a bigger reaction than it needs to be. Let's take an example. Imagine for a moment you're cooking dinner and your partner is watching you. You start to feel uncomfortable with them watching you, and then you see them frown, and the discomfort suddenly feels a lot worse. Your body feels tense, your breathing becomes shallow, there might be a rush of heat that flows through you. You start to very quickly feel angry, and maybe even feelings of shame. And then from there, you think thoughts that might go along the lines of, they think I am doing this wrong and trying to control me. They always think they are better than me, and so on. By this point, you are well into the reaction you are having to your partner watching you. And so then from here, you can go into certain behaviors, such as verbally attacking them for all the things you are thinking, and how them watching and frowning at you, of course, means they are trying to control you. Now, at this point, we're not going to go into relationship dynamics in this video, but this example is really to show how the process of where reaction and reactivity can happen. And what happens here, what we've just described, happens very fast. It can happen in seconds. Now, what is true here is your partner was watching you and frowned. What might be unconscious experiences that relate to your reaction are previous experiences of being criticized and controlled that come into the story you're telling yourself and the emotions that rise up about what is going on. So this, in a nutshell, is the process of a reaction or reactivity. Being reactive doesn't always lead to what we call attack and defense behaviors, however. We actually have 3 types of reactions. We typically associate reactivity with the fight response, being defensive or attacking, that might lead to arguing, debating, trying to prove that you're right, and those kinds of behaviors. A second type of reactivity is the shutting down reaction that leads to kind of a non-responsiveness, stonewalling, abandonment, kind of avoiding, withdrawing types of behaviors. This is what we refer to as flight behaviors that this emergency reaction can set off. And there's a third type of reactivity where you feel like you want to fix or take care of the other person to kind of mitigate a situation. These behaviors are more about trying to control or manage or anticipate something, trying to manipulate to make something happen or reduce the tension that you're feeling between you. So, okay, we have got a sense then of what reactivity looks like and how it can go and be experienced, what happens in relationships. So how do we change this? What we're needing to do is create a pause between the sensations in your body and the emotions, thoughts, and behaviors that typically follow. The good news is that even though we're unable to use our rational thinking part of our brain, we can still notice the reaction as it is happening. Thinking through things and noticing are 2 different processes. We may not understand why we are having the reaction, but we can notice it. And if we can notice the sensations, then we can pause or say stop before we really get immersed in the full reaction. So what are we doing when we say stop? First, it is important to get to know what your particular reaction feels like. What are the sensations that typically happen for you? Do you feel tense, hot, or a sinking feeling? Does your breathing change? Does your heart rate beat faster? So once you notice these sensations, then you can mentally just say stop. And this stop says don't say or do anything. Saying stop to the whole reaction that happens after those sensations have gone through your body. So just like in the example above, there were emotions, thoughts, and behaviors that kicked in automatically. But you could say stop when you start to notice the sensations of being uncomfortable. By saying stop, you're pausing on this and mentally saying, put this aside and give yourself that pause. So if you can say stop, you can take a breath. And if you can take 1 breath, you can take 2. And if you can take 2, you can take 3 breaths. When you are taking these breaths, it is important that you bring your attention to noticing the breath so that you can take a deeper one each time. This will have the effect of regulating those sensations in your body, which means sort of calming down the crisis state that you are in when you're reacting. And as you notice a shift in those sensations, that calming down, then focus on that even more, as it helps it to go even calmer. So breathing deeply is not about taking some deep breaths just to do that, while still thinking in this defensive, reactive way. But it means creating a pause until the sensations calm down and until you can ask yourself a very important question, which is, what do I want to happen here? What is my goal here? It is important to try and take that breath until you can ask that question and answer it, until your rational brain is more engaged. If when you ask that question, you are still wanting to prove a point, to control what's happening, to vent a bunch of angry feelings because that's what you're feeling, then you're still in that reaction. But if you can say to yourself that you want to hear what the other person has to say, or that you can feel curious and open to what is going on with your partner, rather than closed off or protective, then you have been successful in changing the reaction. So this is what this pause can create and change with practice, to go from this defensive reactivity to a kind of open curiosity. It is not easy. Our habits and conditioned responses and the protective parts of us don't change that easily. So don't give up. Some days will be easier than others, and practice over time will create a new habit and an interruption to that reactivity. So thank you for joining me, and I hope that you become successful with this creating a pause. Let me know in the comments if that happens for you. And if you like this video, give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to click that subscribe button if you want to receive more videos. Until next time.